Okay, hello everyone and welcome back. So today we're talking about The Song That Never Ends, our favorite ongoing mini-series, The Handmaid's Tale Season 4. And I'm going into this like cautiously optimistic because Season 3 was a hot ass mess. So the good thing about this first episode, it was very promising, I'll give it that. And they give us a new perspective and new characters. So they're trying to refresh, it seems, which is something that the series so badly needs. So the episode kind of starts off in the middle of the action. June is shot and she's not doing that well. Serena kind of is starting her journey to victimize herself. And that's something we'll talk about later. And Lydia is rightfully bruised and battered. I wish they would just get rid of her because I don't know how you guys feel when she comes on screen, but I just want to hit her. So let's start with June. She's badly injured. She doesn't seem to be doing that well. She's on the verge of death. And they always tease us with June, right? Like she's always like on the verge of almost dying. Thankfully, they're able to get her to a safe house, or in this case, a safe farm or a state farm. And here we meet Miss Keys. And Miss Keys was a very good character to have in the first episode because she offers this new perspective. So again, June is badly injured. She kind of has that voiceover moment where she's sitting there and she's like, you know, the walls are closing in on her because Gilead just keeps coming after her. And that's true, right? Like the walls are closing in on her and everybody else, and they are relentless. And so she has to kind of force herself to get up. And she talks about the disconnect between her body and her mind. Like at this point, she's so numb that like fear is what's motivating her, right? Like that's the only way she can kind of get up out of bed. And so she's finally able to get, you know, some energy and move around. And that's where we're introduced to Miss Keys. And Miss Keys was good. You know, she kind of sits next to her and she says, you know, okay, what's the plan? You know, like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And at first when I saw Miss Keys, I was worried because I didn't like her. You know, I didn't like her vibe. I thought she was a snitch. I wasn't sure. She just came off so aggressive. And June was kind of looking at her like, excuse me, ma'am, like, do you not see that I'm tired? And, you know, she just gets pissed off. She's like, well, if you weren't going to do anything, then why did you come here? And honestly, it's like, relax, you know, just chill out. And later we find out why Miss Keys has been kind of acting this way. It's because she's been very badly abused by her husband. And it seems like he's unable to have children. So he's kind of forced her to lay down with other men in order to have children. And, you know, the one thing she says is that as she's kind of telling June her story, because again, Miss Keys, she's very aggressive initially. You don't know how to take her. And it gets to a climax where, you know, she basically tries to, you know, force feed one of the handmaids, and June has to take her aside and be like, what are you doing? And Miss Keys kind of explains like, listen, being a wife is just as hard as being a handmaid. And we don't really get that perspective from the wife. Like, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't really seen what goes on with these wives. And when we have, they seem equally abusive, right? Like with Serena and her, you know, Desperate Housewives gang, like I had no real sympathy for them. So watching her describe what she's been going through, you kind of wonder, you're like, oh, I guess the grass is not greener on the other side. And also June's naivete was really interesting because she's sitting there looking at her like, oh, you're 12, you know, like these things shouldn't burden you. And honestly, like Gilead never ceases to amaze her. And this girl's looking at her like, you know nothing about me. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know shit. Like, don't tell me like what you're shocked by. And so June kind of like wakes up a bit, and then she starts to realize, okay, like we need to get moving. So as she's listening to Miss Keys describe her abuse, you kind of see June getting like pissed off again. And then there's this running theme of Mayday, right? Like, what is Mayday? Like, they're kind of waiting for these people to kind of organize themselves to get them into Canada. And June is starting to realize this episode that like, we are the ones we've been waiting for. Like, we can't really be waiting on people. Like, there are people right here, right now that need to go away. And so the clock is ticking, right? Like, it's time for people to play a more active role, because up until this point, they've been kind of going from plan A to plan B, but things need to accelerate, right? Like, now you have to be the one to come up with the plan A to get to the plan B. And again, the walls are closing in for everyone, and it seems like these children that were taken to Canada, like this is gonna start a war. Like, this is causing a lot of, like, this is adding to the tension, right? Like, had it just been handmaids that left, that would have been one thing, but these children are adding an extra layer of pressure, where if Gilead does end up capturing them, I mean, they're not going to have any mercy, right? And so, which takes us to Serena and Fred. And Serena and Fred, they have to be like the two worst people on television. And they're kind of in this room. And if you recall from the last season, her immunity was taken away. And because she's honestly, to me, Serena is as trash as her husband. She doesn't piss me off as much as Lydia, but Serena is somebody at her core that believes in what Gilead is doing. Like, she tries to play the victim, but every now and then she lets her mask slip. Anyways, they kind of tell her like, hey, these children were taken. And Fred is like, this is going to start a war. Like, Fred is just being Fred at this point. And Serena kind of goes, you know, may God help her or something, like something in reference to June. At first I thought about it and I'm like, oh, maybe she's kind of low-key rooting for June. And then I thought about it again because I'm like, you guys let me know. I think some part of Serena really thinks that June may have her back if June is to come to Canada. You know what I mean? Like, that she would defend her and that Serena can somehow wiggle her way out of this. And Serena, sadly, that's not the case. You know, lady, you are as sick as your husband. And so there's this whole conversation between victim and perpetrator that I think the series will kind of continue in season 4. And Lydia, for me, I mean, I guess she got in trouble because all these handmaids had run away and they were under her care. And in Lydia's defense, I mean, she has been saying that June should be shot. You know what I mean? Like, she's kind of always known that June was a problem and she's been protected by Fred. So, but watching her sit up there, like, all self-righteous, being like, you know, she's been missing for whatever days, and Lydia is just trash, you know what I mean? And the only reason they didn't kill her is because of her age, and they can really prove that. I mean, the only thing they could prove is that she was incompetent. But yeah, I had no sympathy for her. And moving on to another sort of victim perpetrator is Nick. And Nick seems to be like the invisible hand in the background. He manages to somehow get the architect of Gilead as a consultant when in fact he should have been shot. And this architect of Gilead, sorry, I'm forgetting his name, but this old man is very weird because although he's helped the handmaids kind of escape, at his core he believes in the mission, right? Like, he really thinks that, you know, we need to replenish the earth with more babies. So how Nick was able to negotiate that is really interesting. But the one thing this scummy old man says is, sorry, like, I just don't like this man. He says, you know, like, oh, the power of June, you know what I mean? June's ability to get people to do whatever the fuck it is that they want her to do. And that's true, right? And that's true. And June is someone that will get on your nerves, and then she doesn't get on your nerves. And she was doing well this episode, and then there was one moment where she kind of pissed me off. So again, June is kind of injured. She's at the farm. All these things are happening in the background, and she doesn't know what to do, right? She's like, what? Like, we're kind of stuck here. And when she finds out about Mrs. Keyes' abuse, she kind of realizes, like, oh, this is really bad. And then she has the balls to go up to Elma and be like, you know, this girl is being abused. How come we didn't do anything about it? Like, how is this possible? And Elma's like, excuse me, ma'am. Like, do you not see that we're all barely surviving? Like, is that... So, you know, June sometimes goes off on the wrong people. And so the end of the episode kind of sets up the rest of the series, which is this impending doom. And so June kind of has the realization that we need to move fast. And she gets her opportunity to kind of test it when one of the guardians is caught that had abused Miss Keyes. And they take him to the shed and they basically read out his rights. They're saying, well, you know, you abused the child, you did this and that, like, the punishment is death. And she gives the knife to Miss Keyes and says, hey, like, the punishment for the, like, you're right, you know, we don't hide, we fight. And Miss Keyes just kind of stabs him repeatedly. And what I got out of that is, like, June is starting to take a more assertive role, a more violent role. Like, you're starting to see that they're at the point now where they can't, like, you can't leave any prisoners behind, right? Like, anybody you can take out, you have to take out because they're coming for you and they're coming for you fast. And I like the end of the episode when Miss Keyes kind of gets into bed, like, drenched in blood, like, and you can see June being like, okay, so we're not sitting ducks. And that's how the episode ends. So I thought this was a good episode in terms of kind of not only giving us a new perspective and expanding this world. Like, I do like that we bounce around from Fred to June to just to get, like, contrasting perspectives. And also this idea of Mayday, like, it does add a sense of urgency, especially now that June, I think, is realizing, like, you are the Mayday. Like, you're not sitting ducks. And if you wait for something to happen, something's gonna happen to you. So we're cautiously optimistic this season. We'll see what happens. And until next time.